Hello and welcome. In this video, we're going to walk through the basic installation of the CarbonCheck tool on Windows OS. So I'm glad that you are interested in the CarbonCheck tool. I hope that you find it useful. In this video, we'll demonstrate and talk a little bit about where and how you can get the CarbonCheck application, how you can install it on your system, make sure that it's all running, and talk through a few resources that you might find useful as far as learning how to use CarbonCheck. There's a couple different places that you can get the CarbonCheck tool, which is, of course, free and open source. The easiest place to access the tool is probably by going to the website shown here, PassiveHouseTools.com. We'll be sure to leave a link in the description below as well. So if you go to the PassiveHouseTools.com website, which you see here, you can find the homepage for the Passive House Tools project, which is an umbrella project encompassing several different specialized software tools designed for Passive House modelers in order to make their lives easier, faster, and make the process of Passive House design better, more functional, more useful. CarbonCheck is one of those Passive House tools, and we can get to the CarbonCheck website by simply scrolling down a little bit here, and we can navigate directly to the CarbonCheck website by just clicking right here. I should note, if you're interested in any of the other Passive House tools you can see here, these are all free and open source tools designed for Passive House modelers. Feel free to check out any of the other tools here if they seem valuable or useful. For our purposes, though, we're going to take a look at this CarbonCheck tool today and talk about the installation. So I'm just going to click on where it says CarbonCheck here, and that'll take us over to the CarbonCheck specific website. Now, CarbonCheck has two main purposes. It is used for baselining Passive House models and then for automatic reporting of Passive House data, in particular for teams who are looking to demonstrate compliance for funding applications and other sorts of compliance reporting. CarbonCheck is custom designed, especially designed for teams in New York State in particular. So right now, CarbonCheck works for New York State teams in particular. If you're interested in CarbonCheck, we'll talk a little bit about some of the other resources here on the website, some of the tutorials. But for now, let's just take a look at how we install CarbonCheck. So there's a couple different places we can go. We can either click on the install link here, or I can click on this install button up at the top. Those will both take us to the same page here where we can find and download the installer. Now, CarbonCheck is designed to work on both Windows OS and Mac OS. So depending on the operating system that you're using, you would want to click on the right button here. For our purposes in this video, we're going to take a look at the Windows OS installer. So I'm just going to go ahead and click on this for Windows OS button, and you'll see that that's going to go off and download an installer. And let me grab this, and I'm just going to drag it here right to my desktop just so that we have it. So I just downloaded this from the website here, and you can see it says CarbonCheck for Windows.msi. If you're familiar with Windows operating system, you know that these MSI tools are installers. So this little guy here that we just downloaded is going to install CarbonCheck on our system. And all I have to do is double click this, and it's going to do the installation. Now I've already got CarbonCheck installed on my system, so I'm going to actually go ahead and remove CarbonCheck. So it noticed that I actually already have this installed on my computer, so I'm going to remove it. We'll do a clean removal, and then we'll click this again and do a fresh install. So there we go. So we get a fresh install now. We've removed it, and now we're reinstalling it. Hopefully, if you haven't installed this before, then you wouldn't have to do that removal step, obviously. But just so we're all in the same place, I went ahead and removed it from my computer. Now, one thing CarbonCheck wants to know is where do you want to install CarbonCheck? So by default, it's going to try and install itself in CarbonCheck on your computer. I would recommend that. That's the easiest place to install it. You could try and install it in your program files depending on the permissions that you have. If you're working on a company computer or something, you may not have the right permissions to install it on program files. We have found that it's easiest to just try and install it right here on the C drive. So hopefully that works for you. I'm going to just say next, and this will do its thing for a second. It's going to go and install a bunch of files on my C drive. Now, what did it do? So that seemed to complete properly. Let me bring up my file explorer here. And so I'm here on my C drive, and you'll notice that we have a new folder here called CarbonCheck. So this was just installed just now by this guy. And if I go into this folder, you'll see that just, as one would expect, there's a application file here that we can just double click and run. We can make a shortcut, put this in our, put this on our desktop or something as well. But we can also just double click this, and that'll run the application. So if I double click this and just wait for a second while it boots up for the first time, here's our CarbonCheck application. Now, there's all sorts of features and functionality here that we're not going to go through here. If you want to learn more about how to use CarbonCheck, check out the other videos in the series. Take a look at the links in the description below. We'll talk about those in other videos. But it looks like everything has installed properly here. CarbonCheck is running and operational on my computer. So I'll just say X to close that out. So CarbonCheck is now installed. A couple quick notes on the installation of CarbonCheck and some other things about the requirements. So let's just talk about the requirements for CarbonCheck to operate properly here. We're able to install CarbonCheck, but in order to use CarbonCheck to do anything useful, you're going to need some other programs. So if you're using PHPP, the Passive House Planning package, you're going to want to have Microsoft Excel and the PHPP installed. So important note, CarbonCheck is not a replacement for PHPP or Woofy Passive. It is merely a tool that works with those other applications. So if you're using PHPP, you need to own that and have that installed on your computer. Likewise, if you're using Woofy Passive, you need to have Woofy Passive installed on your computer as well. Again, CarbonCheck is not a replacement for those programs. It does not install those programs. You need to install those programs and have those installed on your system in order to use CarbonCheck properly. Now, if you have any trouble with the CarbonCheck installation, as I say here, you can feel free to go to the contact page here and reach out to us. You can post a message or send us an email if you have any trouble installing CarbonCheck at all. A couple of other just very brief resources here that you might find useful. So we have frequently asked questions here on the website, and then we've got a couple of very brief tutorials here around how to use CarbonCheck to create baseline models, both for Woofy Passive and for PHPP, and then also how to use CarbonCheck for automatically reporting out your baseline data that you created using the baselining function there. So you can take a look at these step-by-step tutorial walkthroughs that sort of walk you through the different features. Of course, you can also go to the YouTube page. So the YouTube channel here has other videos related to these other tasks that you might want to use or execute with CarbonCheck. So you can always take a look there. And then, of course, if you need to contact us for any reason, there's a contact page here where you can always, where there's a bunch of links and email addresses where you can reach out to find help if you are having any trouble at all with CarbonCheck. So you can always reach out and ask for help there. The one last resource that I would just point you to is if you are at all interested, up here you can see the source code for CarbonCheck. So CarbonCheck is free and open source. So all of the source code is here on the GitHub repository. And so if you're interested in that side of things, you can always link through to the GitHub page there as well. So hopefully that is all working for you. Hopefully CarbonCheck is installed on your system and operational. Again, if you have any trouble, feel free to reach out at any time. If you are interested in learning how to install use CarbonCheck to execute any of those operations, again, take a look at the other videos and links in the description below.